Two of the most important aspects of any great fire attack is the size up and the 360.
Battalion 147, medic truck 304, medic engine 22, medic engine 311, medic engine 313, residential structure fire, report of smoke and flame scene.
Officer, medic engine 311 is on scene, single story, single family dwelling. Heavy smoke and fire showing from the alpha side. We have an immediate exposure to the occupancy to the delta side. Medic engine 311 will be in the attack mode, switching attack. I'm only going to switch over monitor for 360.
So this video comes from the San Bernardino County Firefighters channel. They are one of the best out there, so I will put a link to the full video in the description below. Be sure you go and check them out. But originally, they were dispatched to a residential structure fire with possible occupants. And I wanted to highlight some of the things that they did when they first arrived on scene. This video was a great example of a good size up and a good 360, and both of those are important for a great fire attack. Now you might be asking, what is the difference between a size up and a 360? And they're very similar in many ways, but essentially a size up just gives you a street view of what's going on. As soon as you pull up on scene, this is your report to everybody else, including dispatch, what you see and what you think you're going to be doing going forward. A 360 is a more comprehensive view of the entire fire scene. The officer or whoever's in the front seat gets out and literally walks around the entire structure to look for any sort of possible issues or anything else that might change your original strategy of attacking the fire. Both of these elements are important. We'll go into 360s here in a minute, but right now I wanted to talk about his size up and what he did well. The first thing you notice is that there was no panicking, there was no yelling. He was very clear and concise what he said, so every incoming unit knew exactly what to expect when they showed up and exactly what that first unit, his unit, was planning on doing. But there was also some information in his size up that if you are a new or young firefighter and you find yourself doing this in the future, you should include in any size up. And the first thing was the type of structure. You heard him say single story, single family dwelling. That's important for everybody to know, making sure this is not a multifamily residence or any other type of residence. Next thing he said is what he sees. He said heavy smoke and fire showing from the alpha side. This gives everybody a good idea of what they're walking into. Is this just some light, lazy smoke, or is there flames pouring out of the window? That's important to relay to everybody, and he did that clearly and concisely and said exactly what area of the house the fire was coming from. The next thing he mentioned was there any exposures? And he said immediate exposure on the occupancy on the delta side. If there is a structure fire that is out of control and you're going to be going defensive, one of the first things you should be thinking about doing is making sure that you can protect any sort of exposure so that that fire does not spread from that residence to somebody else's residence. You see in this video, you see these houses are pretty tight. So even in a situation like this where it hasn't spread, there will probably be damage. And you'll see a little bit later that looks like the neighbor is standing outside spraying the fire with his garden hose. He's doing the best he can to probably put out the fire, but also protect his stuff as well. So it's important to let other incoming units know if there's any exposures and where they are. And then finally, he said exactly what he was going to do. He said, medic engine 311 in attack mode, have all units monitor for 360. So he's telling all the incoming units, we're going to begin our attack. Make sure you listen up. I'm going to get out and walk around and let you know if I see anything else.
Hey, you got any info? Okay.
Comm Center, medic engine 313 is on scene. I'll be assuming 5th Street IC. ICP will be located at medic engine 313.
Medic engine 313, I copy on scene, assuming 5th Street ICP to be your vehicle.
All units responding to 5th Avenue B Street structure fire. 360 complete. We got heavy smoke and fire from the alpha side. Direct exposure on delta. Unknown on occupancies, whether it's evacuated or not. No life hazard present. Offensive strategy will be assuming fire attack. Be transitional until we get standby in place. Medic engine 311 has a water supply.
Battalion 147 copies your 360 and assuming fire attack.
Now, this guy did a lot of things right, and I wanted to point out some of them. The first thing that he did is he asked the sheriff's deputy, and it looked like some other people, some civilians or neighbors standing outside, do you have any info? A lot of times that's going to be your best source of information, is people that are either occupants that got out or neighbors knowing exactly what goes on in that house. So be sure, if you find yourself getting ready to do a 360 and you see a neighbor, ask them, hey, do you know anything? How many people live here? Is everybody out? The next thing he did is he actually did a 360. You see this too many times where somebody will get out to do a 360 and they kind of poke their head around one side and then the other and call that a 360. Now, if you're dealing with a massive commercial fire that takes up several blocks, obviously it's not going to be realistic to do an entire 360, but a small residential fire like this, you should absolutely be walking around the entire structure. So what did he relay in his 360? Well, he relayed some of the information he did in his scene size up, which was heavy smoke and fire from the A side and a direct exposure on the D side. It's important to relay that again because that tells all the other incoming units that that actually is the case. We're going to need to protect the exposure on the D side, and we're also going to need to begin our fire attack on the Alpha side. You heard him also mention that there was unknown occupancy. That is one of the most important aspects and reasons why you do a 360. When you do your scene size up and you first show up, you might not see any victims or anybody hanging out the back, but if you walk around to the back of the house and you see a victim hanging out of a second-story window yelling for help, that changes your priorities. That will now become your number one priority, to get and rescue that person. Next, he said no life hazards. That's an important thing to look for when you're walking around a house. Are there any down power lines? Looks like this is probably an older neighborhood. Looks like the power lines are still above ground. That's important to know because you don't want a firefighter walking back there and accidentally stepping on a live power line. And finally, he laid out exactly what his plan of attack was going to be. He said it was going to be offensive and transitional. If you're not sure what transitional is, that means you're just going to hit the fire from the outside before you go in to fight the fire from the inside. It's kind of common sense, but that's a common term that you'll hear. But also he said that they have a water supply secured. That's important to let other incoming units know that they're not going to need to get a water supply. Now, that doesn't mean that you aren't aware of where to get a second water supply, but for something like this, looks like there's a hydrant right out front. They could easily just go operate off of that, and that should be all the water they need for this particular scene. And in my opinion, this guy did a great job. His instructions were clear and concise. He let his crew and all the incoming units know exactly what they were going to be showing up on and what he wanted them to do when they got there. Maintaining composure is an important part of being a leader on the Fireground. Let's see how it's done.
Alarm engine 5, engine 11, engine 12, ladder 5, ladder 13, rescue 5, squad 3, squad 2, battalion 2, battalion 178, 448 Texas Street Northeast. Have a report of a structure fire. All units go to TAC 1 en route, 448 Texas Northeast.
Hold on, crossly, guys. See what we got.
Engine 5 is on scene. This is a two-story. It's like a fourplex. You have smoke showing from multiple openings on Division 1. This is a working fire. Engine 4, Staking Texas. Correction, Engine 5, Staking Texas Command. The offensive, stretching to quarter line.
That was an awesome size up, and I'm always impressed when officers of any age give a calm, cool, collected size up in the middle of a structure fire, because you know what's going through their head is jump time! So what made that size up so good? Well, the first thing he did is before that truck even stopped, he gave orders to his jump guys, telling them, I need you to pull this crosslay. And so they know exactly what's expected of them. They don't jump off the truck and they're wandering around trying to figure out what to do. The next thing that he did is he explained exactly what he saw. Now that's important for several reasons, but number one, it's important for dispatch. So dispatch knows what to expect, because a lot of times dispatch will give you the wrong information, and it's not necessarily their fault. A lot of times people that are there on scene give incorrect information, or they don't say something that's important. So when he pulled up and you heard him say it's a fourplex, fire from multiple openings on Division 1, dispatch and every other incoming unit knew exactly what to expect as soon as they got on scene. The next thing that he did is he established who was in command. He said he was on Engine 5 and that he would be taking Texas command. Now you'll hear a lot of them say whatever the street that incident is on. That's important to say in your size up so that everybody knows exactly where command will be established, and generally that's also the place that will be considered the Alpha side, or the front part of the building where the command will be established and the attack will begin. And then finally, the last thing he did is he explained to everybody what he was planning on doing. He was going to go offensive, which means he's going to pull a line and go in, and he was pulling an 1 3/4 line. Again, this is important important to everybody coming behind them so that they know what to expect. Am I going to be pulling a backup line? Is this a really big fire? Is he going to plan on going defensive? How's he going to handle this? And what can I expect when I get on scene? That was a phenomenal size up from this officer.
Attention, copy. Engine 5 on scene, a two-story fourplex with smoke showing multiple points on the for Division 1. Engine 5 has a working fire in command and the officer strategy.
Also, I got to give a shout out to that dispatcher. That dispatcher is doing a very good job. Dispatching is a very difficult job and they are way underappreciated. So when you do get a good dispatcher, they're worth their weight in gold.
Ladder 5 on scene.
Is there anybody inside, ma'am? The captain's still in there. Captain, who's in there?
On scene. Returning to the command. Returning to the command. Go ahead and take command from out here. You will be my attack group.
Okay, you guys get on there. Ready to go? We're going to need some back. We're going to go in and make a search. It looks like it's just this one room right here above. If you guys want to go above or come with us, go another room. We'll go with you for now. You got this. You guys ready?
Also, it's important to note that those two jump guys you see standing there, masking up, getting ready to go in, this was their first 24 hours on shift. And I think these guys did a great job. And also in the description of the original video, which I'll leave in the link below, this was also the engineer's first day, who did a great job pulling past the structure, giving his officer an opportunity to see 3 sides of the structure so he could give a great size up.
I need everybody out. Hey! Let's go. Come on, guys. You guys ready for a ladder? There it goes. Okay, get down here, get low. Open it up, open it up.
So they go on to put out the fire and save the day. But what was so good specifically about what this guy did? Well, he was cool, calm, and collected the entire time and had a fantastic command presence. Gave a great size up, stayed with his guys and coached them through everything, when to advance, when to open the bail, shut it down, where to find the seat of the fire. Did a good job finding out if there were any bystanders or any victims in the home still, as well as coordinating with the ladder company. And keep in mind, this guy had an entirely new engine crew, so it's awesome to see an officer doing a great job like this. And if you want to see another great video about the importance of command presence, you should check out this one right here. Fire scenes are dynamic, and things can go from bad to worse quickly.
Engine 11 is on scene of a small single-story multi-family structure. We have a working fire with heavy smoke and flame coming from the Charlie side. Engine 11 will be operating offensive strategy, going in for primary search and fire control. Engine 11 to all units, stage them out where we have heavy oxygen takes in this residence. We are going to go defensive. Let's go! Hey, pull back! Pull back!
Engine 11 is on scene.
Pull back! Let's go!
So this video comes from the Albuquerque Fire Department, and if you aren't familiar with them and their channel, you should be. I will put the entire link to the video below. But this call, they were originally dispatched to a dumpster fire, and I can't tell you how often this happens. And it's not necessarily the fault of dispatch, it could be the information that they're getting. Got him! Got him! But there's a miscommunication, because while they got dispatched for a dumpster fire, they show up to find out that it's an actual structure fire.
Oh Lord Jesus, it's a fire!
In a fourplex. And if you are a new firefighter or somebody looking to get into the fire service, this is something you should be aware of, because as you start your career and as you become a firefighter, you should get used to the exercise of, on the way to any call, EMS, fire, rescue, whatever it is, thinking through some different possibilities. Now, it's obviously going to be impossible to imagine every single possibility at every single scene, but it's important to think through, what's the information that I know, where am I going, and what are some hazards or some things I could be showing up on that I might not expect.
We're going to be working the offensive strategy. Engine 11 currently has a command.
Command to all units. Stage on the intersection of Ross and Ortiz. We have oxygen tanks in this residence that are starting to explode. Set that dead gun. Let's kind of stay back for now. There's a bunch of oxygen tanks in there. Okay.
Have all these been evacuated?
Yeah.
So this is a great example of things going from bad to worse quickly. Originally, they show up and think they're going on a dumpster fire, which turns into a structure fire, which now turns into a structure fire with an unknown number of oxygen tanks, and they're going off. This officer does a great job pulling his firefighters out, switching from offensive to defensive, and reassessing his priorities. You heard him here say that he wanted to get the deck gun going to put some water on it. In my opinion, that's a very underutilized tool, and that's a great use of that resource. I can put a ton of water on a structure from the outside and keep everybody away at a safe distance. You also hear him here talking to this other firefighter, figuring out, have all of these other structures been evacuated? You'll see later in the video, it looks like there might be some elderly people that live there. That can be difficult. That can be very challenging for firefighters to get people that are limited mobility, or maybe some senior citizens, completely evacuated to secure the area.
Pertaining to Engine 11 Command, I've been following your radio traffic star. Copy. We're on scene of a working fire, significant fire at this time. I'm now going to be assuming Ortiz Command. We're going to call this. Some will be located on the Alpha Delta side of the structure. Command to Engine 11, can you just give me a count?
Engine 11, copy that. Transfer command. Right now we are setting up a deck gun for defensive operations. We've got reports of multiple oxygen bottles that have exploded. We are setting up the deck gun right now. Some more resources come out here, Chief, will be great.
Command copy. Command to Engine 11, just confirming, were we able to evacuate 1313, which is located just south of this residence?
So there's a lot that just happened there. And if you are new to the fire service or you're interested in getting into the fire service, there's something that they said that you should know. That arriving officer asks for what's called a CAN report. That stands for conditions, actions, needs. Essentially, what that arriving officer is asking that engine is, what do you see? What are the conditions? What have you done? What actions have you taken? And what do you need? What resources can I get you? The other thing I wanted to address is, I've gotten this question from a lot of people, primarily overseas, is why is it that engine officers or ladder officers are going in with their firefighters in to actually fight the fire? Why aren't they staying outside and just assuming command and staying out of there? Well, this is the way a lot of fire departments will operate here in the States, is the first arriving officer, that engine officer, will stay with their crew and go fight the fire, and then a higher ranking officer will generally come shortly behind them. In this case, it sounds like it's a battalion chief, and they will assume command from that original officer. But the most important thing I wanted to point out about this is what competent and good leadership looks like. That is so important on the Fireground. I did another video recently showing exactly what terrible leadership on the Fireground looks like. If you haven't seen it, I'll put it up here somewhere. You can check it out, or I'll put it in the description down below. But contrast that video with what you see going on here. Nobody's yelling. Nobody's panicking, nobody's raising their voices, everybody is cool, calm, and collected, maintaining their priorities and continuing to fight the fire.
Evacuating everything over there.
And still give me some pressure on the phone.
Engine 3 command, copy, Rescue 3, Rescue 2, North Division. We're evacuating all residents on the north side. We also have a line of into the apartment for the fire department.
Oh, my God.
So they got the fire under control from the exterior and decided to go back to interior and put out the rest of the fire. But what you didn't see before this is they ended up having problems somehow and lost pressure on this hand line. Now that can happen for a million different reasons, but again, this goes to something else I talked about in another video, is the importance of a good pump operator who is competent and can think on their feet and troubleshoot quickly. Now there's a million reasons you can lose pressure on a hand line, but they figured it out quickly. Nobody panicked and everybody stayed cool, calm, and collective. Oh, and YouTube thinks you're really gonna like this video. Check it out and let me know what you think.